So how's everybody doing? Welcome back to another episode of Here's the Thing at the End of the Day. It's just Hank here. Tried to get a hold of Ricky. Have kind of a conflict at the near to the end of the day, which is when we usually do these episodes, and I'm not sure if he's awake. I hope he's doing okay. But I've given him the in if he wants to join at any time. I think this is just going to be a shorter episode, just me talking about two things that I've been really thinking about when it's come to sports and when it's come to the internet and stuff like that. The first thing I'm going to be talking about is Pro Football Focus and how I think it's absolutely garbage. The second thing that I'm going to be talking about is EDP, Eat That Pussy 445, and something I saw on the internet that made him look bad. I just wanted to kind of comment on it like I did earlier in the year, which was the last time I talked about something that he did. And then finally with the Eagles game, and maybe wrap it up with some fantasy football if anyone joins the chat and wants to discuss stuff as well. I just wanted to get this episode out of the way before football started. But so Pro Football Focus. Here's what I want to say about Pro Football Focus. Here, the story goes something like this. Okay, so I'm on Twitter, and oftentimes you go around on Twitter and you think to yourself, "Wow, nothing good happens when you spend too much time on Twitter." But I'm on Twitter, and there's a post that says, I don't know who posted it. I think it might have been someone on NFL Network or something like that. And it was something along the lines of, yeah, how's it going? How's it going, Joe? It was something along the lines of, if, Blake Bortles threw, I think something like his completion percentage is better than Carson Wentz. He has less interceptions than Matt Ryan. He has more rushing yards than Marcus Mariota. He has a better QBR or something like that than Tom Brady. And I think it's like he's scored more touchdown passes than Derek Carr. He should be considered to be a good quarterback or something like that. And I looked at that and I was like, well, a lot of these guys do things better than he does, so this post is absolute BS, basically insinuating that Blake Bortles must be a good quarterback because of this, that, and that. And I'm not saying that Blake Bortles is a bad quarterback this year. He's definitely played very well in the month of December. But, I mean, from what I remember, like everyone was talking about how he needed to be replaced by Eli Manning. Everyone was talking about how he sucked at the beginning of the season, and then there was a guy who posted close to the bottom. It said something along the lines of, "Well, Pro Football Focus has Blake Bortles ranked as the 10th best quarterback in the NFL." And I responded to that, of course, like nothing good ever happens to me responding to someone on Twitter because I usually end up getting blocked. Said something along the lines of, Pro Football Focus is about as useful as QBR, which QBR is probably one of the most useless stats in the NFL. We all know that the best quarterback according to QBR was Charlie Batch in a game where he threw like for 200 yards, had one rushing touchdown, 2 interceptions or something like that, and that was the best QBR. So no. Yeah, QBR is garbage as well as Pro Football Focus. But I got into talking to this guy, and he was like, well, Pro Football Focus is used by NFL teams, and they've got scouts and stuff like that. And I ended up showing him a statistic, and I did talk about Ricky about this, and he did agree with me. What was it? Last week, right? Last week. It was Nick Foles and it was Dak Prescott, right, for the Eagles and the Cowboys. This is not going to be I hate to say that this isn't going to be me saying that Dak Prescott's worse than Nick Foles or Nick Foles is better than Dak Prescott or Dak is better than Nick. No, I don't care to have that conversation because in the grand scheme of things, I just don't care. But what I will say is Dak Prescott threw for 18 for 27. That's a 66% completion percentage, 212 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and 1 rushing touchdown. And this was his overall grade by Pro Football Focus, the monkeys at Pro Football Focus. According to it, it said Dak Prescott, 85.7 overall grade. If you look at traditional stats, it may look like a mediocre night for Prescott, but that doesn't quite tell the whole story. One of Dak's interceptions was not his fault, as his arm was hit during his throwing motion, and he was perfectly on point on a couple of deep passes that his receivers just weren't able to haul in. He also scored a touchdown on a scramble and had a couple of nice runs that picked up first downs or good yardage. So that was Dak Prescott's overall grade. Okay, 85.7. Didn't throw a single touchdown, had 1 rushing touchdown, 2 interceptions. This was Nick Foles' overall grade, 75.2. The final stat line looks like Nick Foles picked up where Carson Wentz left off, but the journeyman backup making his first start since Week 9 of 2016 with Kansas City struggled throwing deep and outside the numbers right. Foles was able to connect on just 1 of his 4 deep passes while completing just 2 of 6 to the right of the hashes beyond 10 yards. When given a clean pocket, Foles picked apart the Giants' secondary, completing 67.9% of his passes, 6.7 yards per attempt, and all 4 of his touchdowns. But he put the ball in harm's way on a couple of occasions, but Foles managed the game well in place for Wentz. And, of course, like the tweet is, Foles, 24 for 38, 64% of his passes, 237 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Pro Football Focus, Dak considerably better with like the confused face. I look at that and I'm just thinking to myself, if that is the baseline that you have, if that's the conclusion that you made, then you didn't watch the Eagles-Giants game. I'm sorry. Or you didn't watch it with open eyes. I think that only one of Nick Foles' passes really were in harm's way. I watched the whole game, so I watched every play. Some of them I watched twice because of the red zone, but which the red zone was ahead because I had to stream the game. But I mean, I'm a teacher in real life, and as a teacher, you have to give Nick Foles the better grade than Dak Prescott because Nick Foles clearly had the better statistics. I don't really see how. I just don't think that some of what was said was warranted. Again, not saying that one quarterback is better than the other. I'm just saying, if you come to those conclusions, then you have one quarterback that made at least one mistake, and you have one quarterback that didn't make any mistakes. And the fact of the matter is, when Nick Foles had a pocket that was closing in on him and he took a hit, he still made really good passes. And he should have completed another deep pass if not for the fact that Torrey Smith was completely interfered with. So I look at those ratings. I disagree, of course, but at the end of the day, I'm absolutely perplexed by that. Not that it really should matter, but if you're operating a website where you're telling people rankings and grades, it should at least be fair to a certain extent. But you look at that and you're like, that's embarrassing, dude. That's just plain and simply embarrassing. I know Pro Football Focus tries to rank offensive linemen, and of course, a lot of offensive linemen have come out and been like, "How could you rank offensive linemen if you don't know what their blocking assignments are because a coach could be like, okay, your blocking assignment is just to let that guy go and block to the outside, and then the quarterback gets sacked. Well, whose fault is that? That's not the lineman's fault for letting the guy go. And especially when they, for a while, have had Jason Kelce ranked as the best center in football. He's not. I'm sorry. Travis Frederick is a better center, at least a better center than Jason Kelce. I think Alex Mack is a better center than Jason Kelce. They just use pure statistics and pure situations to rank these players, but in certain situations, certain players can't be ranked. And which is the big issue between that and like the top 100 list, which not only that, but players vote on the top 100 list. It's the same as the Pro Bowl. Like I said before in the last podcast, people complaining about or whining about who made the Pro Bowl and who didn't make the Pro Bowl. What you really should be whining about is certain players' Madden rankings. But I had this ongoing argument with this kid on Twitter, and he was like, "No, Dak Prescott clearly had a better game because of Pro Football Focus. They're always right." No, their methodology is obviously skewed in some ways, shapes, or forms. Wentz is better than Dak, is better than Foles. I'm fine with that, honestly. Your methodology is clearly flawed if that's what you're going to grade them for a game-to-game basis. Of course, on Monday, Nick Foles could throw like 4 interceptions, and it's not going to matter. But I'm not going to say one is better than the other. But if you're sitting there and you're grading a player, Foles should have the better grade in that game. And when I last talked to Ricky, he agreed with me, which is good. And then I realized that the kid on a Cowboys fan because I looked at his shirt. Yeah. Well, I always knew Alex Mack was a good center, even when he played for the Cleveland Browns. I just your methodology has to be extremely off if you were to say that Jason Kelce is the best center. Jason Kelce is not a good center by himself because he doesn't have enough weight, right? He's good because he's got Wisniewski on one side and he's got Brooks on the other side. Brooks is a Pro Bowl guard in his own right. So Kelce's good when he can get out into space, but he gets battered by defensive tackles just because of the fact that most of them are bigger than him. But that's all I have to say about Pro Football Focus. At the end of the conversation, the guy was like, "Hey, Pro Football Focus, this guy thinks he's smarter than you. You should hire him." Which is like the biggest. You can't really come back from that. You just gotta like take it. But again, don't agree with many of the rankings of Pro Football Focus. And again, people could be like, "Well, you don't like it because what they said about Nick Foles and he's your favorite player." Blah blah blah. No. It's not because of that. It's because when I look at a grade and I smell BS, then it probably is BS. But let's get on to the next topic where I discuss EDP. And again, I kind of broke my rule right there by saying I say his name, but I really don't care. This is just going to be a short segment, but I think I was on Twitter and I saw a video of him. I think it was during the Eagles game against the Giants, which, that game was really upsetting in the fact that the defense just didn't show up and the team got easily exploited by practice squad players. And it was upsetting, but I still believed that the team could win and that the team could play well. I don't have any excuses about the way the team played. It was a bad game, and, you just got to hope that they learn from what happened. But I think watching his videos, and I haven't seen any of them in like months, probably since before the draft. After the draft, because he said all these good things about Donnell Pumphrey. But I watched I watched the video he had with the exchange he had with his dad over like Vaseline or something like that. And here's a 20. I don't know what happened. I don't know what led up to it. I don't really care. But you have a 26-year-old person, and I think he's almost 27. And I don't know his living situation. It doesn't really matter to me one way or another. But you're throwing that much of a temper tantrum about one little game. It just shows a lot of immaturity. And again, I don't know what his situation is, but the guy's the guy's got such a huge anger problem that it's not even funny. You should not be getting as rattled about a game like this. Especially when you don't really even know that much about football. I can't really question EDP as a football fan, but you see all the comments on this video. Oh, this guy's a joke. Oh, this guy's a clown. This guy's trash. He's never eaten pussy in his life. Which again, I'm not going to say anything mean about his weight, which is the first thing somebody would talk negative about, because I've struggled with a weight issue my whole life. I'm not about to, not preach for what I practice. But, you watch that video and that looks like a cry for help if I've ever seen one. Words don't really describe, how to feel after watching something like that. It's like, come on, dude. Like, I'm not even gonna get on him for living with his parents, because I live with my parents too. Past tense, not present tense. But I know how difficult it is to like get past that. We millennials live in like a day and age where, it's hard for some of us to figure out our paths, and it's kind of an excuse. It's kind of an excuse in that sense, but in a sense it's like no excuse. But I don't really know I can't really give a good reason for it. I think that in a sense that some of us don't take the opportunities that are given to us. Like, in many senses, someone could have shown me my future on like a TV screen, and like I would have been like, okay, hold my hand, show me how to get there. No. But I think I think in a sense, he's got something going with, his, him being on the internet. Of course, I'm happy where I am right now. I'm happy that I am where I am right now. But I think that a lot of it's especially like college, right? They, you learn a bunch of stuff in college, but they don't really teach you what you could be with that. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like if I had known more about that stuff, well, at the same time, I wouldn't be at the spot I am right now if I had known that stuff. But in a sense, he's got his internet stuff going on, and a lot of people might say mean things about him. He might see this, and I don't think he will, but I'd be like, oh, that dude is hating on me again. But it's not really any of that. I just hope the best for him, really, because watching that video, and I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a therapist, I can't really see if he's in a bad place or not. But I watch that and I think to myself, damn, this guy is clearly not in the right mind. He's not in the right frame, and he kind of needs help. But I don't. It's kind of rude of me to say that, but I just hope that he's able to get the help that he needs, because as like an adult, I'm kind of embarrassed by that. And the weird thing is, like, you think about, I think about the content that I put out sometimes. I only do this like once, twice a week, and I just do it for fun. I don't get money off of this. I don't have enough views to get money off of it. But I really look at the stuff that I do, and I've done some pretty screwed up things on here in the past. But I was really young. I was like 19 years old. And I've moved past that. But I look at what I do, and I think to myself, am I going to look at this in the future and be embarrassed by it? And yeah, you can look at some of the videos that I've made. Yeah, I've been embarrassed by a lot of the things. Okay. Joe says, as an African American, I'm embarrassed. Yeah. Knowing him, knowing EDP, meeting him, I'm embarrassed by that. And I know it's for entertainment. I've heard one way or another that, it's just for show, it's just for this, it's just for that. But looking at it, you can't be happy about that, because everything, like, if he I'm not saying like certain jobs won't look at that, but most careers, if he ever wants to, like, do something outside of media, these people will look at it and be like, dude, we're not hiring you onto this job because you don't act right. And you could say, well, I'm just being a character, but you just had an argument with your dad over Vaseline. I don't know. And I don't want to make him feel bad. I don't really need his trolls on my ass telling me that I'm jealous of him. I'm not jealous of him. I have everything he doesn't have. And that's not me boasting. That's just me telling the truth. But let's finish with that. Let's talk about the Eagles right now. And after the Giants game, I made a video saying that it's Gucci, we got Nick Foles, which is what I kind of pressed all week. It's Gucci, we got Nick Foles. I have confidence in Nick Foles to be competitive. And that's exactly what the Eagles were against the Giants. Usually when you have a backup quarterback play, you're always thinking, oh, how is he going to screw up? But Nick Foles did everything he could to win that game. He wasn't perfect. He had a decent game. The special teams really bailed the Eagles out with a blocked field goal, a blocked punt, and a blocked extra point, which is the first time that's ever happened since the early 90s with any team. But it was a good game by the offense, or it appeared to be a good game by the offense. A horrible game by the defense, and a horrible game, or a good game by the special teams. And I was asked this morning by Saints Uptown, what concerns you going forward? And I told him, I have confidence in Nick Foles to be competitive. I have confidence in Nick Foles to be competitive against a team like the Raiders. I have confidence in Nick Foles to play a good game, win or lose. I know that he will keep the team competitive in that game. Will he win big playoff games? I don't know. He's only been to one playoff game where he played pretty decently as a second-year player. I am more concerned about the defense and the pass rush, their inability to get to the quarterback in recent weeks. Tackling has been very poor. We've done a decent job stopping the run, but again, I think the team needs to play more aggressively, and that's what they have not been doing. I also worry about the running back situation. This team has not done that good of a job figuring out where to put running backs in certain situations, especially in terms of, like, play calling, certain formations that help certain running backs, certain formations that hurt certain running backs, and this, that, and the third. And the final thing is kicking. Kicking is going to be really tough in the playoffs. It's always really tough in the playoffs. The last 2 times the Eagles went to the playoffs, Akers did really poorly, and Alex Henry did really bad in the playoffs. Akers is a perennial Pro Bowler. Alex Henry was misdrafted in the 4th round, and Alex Henry struggled to make 40-yard field goals, which that's embarrassing. But what I will say is this. My philosophy is defense and running game and offensive line play always wins in the playoffs. Playoffs are usually always won in the trenches. Not always, but usually always. Usually always the team with the more rushing yards usually always wins. And I say usually because sometimes weird things happen. Against the Raiders, I don't really have much to say because this team has already locked up home field advantage. Well, not home field advantage, but they've racked up a bye at least. And Coach Peterson said that even if the Vikings lose, the Eagles are still going balls to the wall, which I really respect. But I think it'll be a close game between the Raiders and the Eagles. The Raiders are basically, mathematically eliminated, but they still have something to play for. They still have something to prove, especially when the last time they played Nick Foles, he hung 7 on them, and the Eagles had to put a 40-burger on the whole team. That basically ended the Raiders season at that point. I think they were 3-4 at that time, and they only won 1 game after that. So, I think that the Raiders have a lot to prove. I think Derek Carr has a lot to prove after fumbling the ball. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be closer than a lot of people think. And I just hope that the defense can play better. And I do think that, not that it really matters, but I don't think that Nick Foles is going to throw 4 touchdowns. I would be very surprised if that happened. But let's quickly get to fantasy football starts and sits real quick, because I have a chance to do this because all the games are being played after this. So fantasy football starts and sits. I would tell you right now, I would tell you to start Cam Newton against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're down a lot of defensive players, and I think they'll make it really tough on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I would start Cam Newton. It would be tough to stop him in this game. The quarterback that I would tell you to sit, Ben Roethlisberger. He's without his number 1 target. There's a chance he can move the ball down the field. Or hold on, no, not Ben Roethlisberger. I would say sit Russell Wilson, because Russell Wilson has not been doing that well in the last few weeks. So I would say sit him. Running backs, I would tell you to start Alex Collins against the Indianapolis Colts. Alex Collins has been having a really good season up to this point, and I would be remiss if I were to say what Ricky would always say. I would tell you to start Drake, the running back of the Miami Dolphins. He's been having a good season up to this point. And what running back I would sit? I would sit. I would sit Jordan Howard. He has not been having good games up to this point. Not up to this point, but the last week or so, he hasn't played that well. I know because I have him on my team. Wide receivers, I would tell you to start Dez. Honestly, I think that Dez is gonna have a pretty good game against Seattle. I really see that. And then I'd tell you to sit Julio. I think Julio can get a lot of good yards, but I don't really see him getting touchdowns against the Saints. Tight end, you've got Ingram, who is a possible starter. Who else? Gronkowski. I think he's a good possible starter, as well as Travis Kelce. Sitting, I would sit Jesse James. I don't know. Honestly, don't know. Defense, I would start the Bears defense, or quite possibly the Jaguars defense. And for kicker, I would start Butker. Start Butker every week, and don't start Nick Folk. Don't start Nick Folk. So this is the episode. I guess Ricky was unable to join. It's okay. I just have to get this out of the way right now, before the games kind of start, so that I don't end up getting into the situation where I'm showing this during the game, because everyone's going to be watching the game, and more than likely so will I. So hope everyone has a good day. Sorry if I'm a little quiet in here. I kind of woke up a few minutes ago and people are sleeping. So I hope everyone has a good day, and hope everyone watches some good football. This is Hank with Two Birds and a Third. What's it called? Here's the thing at the end of the day. Peace.